It's Wednesday morning, and it is June 10th, 2020, and we are here to celebrate wisdom together, as we do every Wednesday morning in Nowhere Village. Today, we are going to talk about what I call values, and this question of what is most valuable, what matters most, is one of the most fundamental spiritual questions that there is, one of the most fundamental questions of life that there is. And everything that I'm going to share with you today is essential, right? This is what this question is all about. What is essential? What matters most? What can we focus on and get behind and connect with and trust that when we're doing that, we're doing the work, right? We're showing up for what matters. And along my path, I had this really big turning point around this question. And I realized that up until that point, I was often looking for somebody else to tell me what my values were and how I was, and if I was doing a good job at honoring those values. I was looking for somewhere to fit in, where there was an authority and there was a dogma and there were rules. And if I followed those rules, I would have a good life. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't, but that would be my fault. And what shifted for me came largely through a question that my teacher asked me, which is, why are you here? What are you doing? Why are you at a meditation retreat? And digging in really, well, I had a sort of spontaneous answer arise, which was love. And then I proceeded to dig into what that meant. What does love mean? And I continue to dig into that question now. But along the way, what I've come to discover is by turning inward and asking these questions of myself, rather than turning outward and saying, what's the best? I was actually asking my teacher at the time a question about what guru I should follow and what lineage I should connect with. And he basically turned it inward. And so instead, my search became, instead of looking for the safest guru, the one that wasn't going to hurt me. At the time, there were all these scandals coming out that continue to come out about the people at the top of any hierarchical power structure who get that sense of privilege and get to put others below them as their source of power. Unfortunately, as beautiful as the teachings may be or the traditions may be, that experience has created lots of monsters. We make our own monsters. We become our own monsters. So at the time, I was basically divorcing from one lineage where the teachers had acted in a really inappropriate way and had ultimately acted in a way that I was realizing went against my values. And so here I was shopping for the next teacher, shopping for the next lineage, shopping for the next right answer. And he basically said, stop. Know what you're looking for. You're just going around grasping. He didn't say that, but that's what I figured out, right? And so the coordinates, which is an inquiry, which is a 9-part inquiry series that we are actually slowly winding our way through right now, that you might not know if you just pop in from time to time, which is fine. But it's a big journey. But that all came out of this experience that I had with my teacher. And it came out of really realizing that now what I gravitate toward are teachers that really engage in inquiry, the teachers that turn the questions back to you and say, hey, you actually have what it takes to do the work of digging this up, and that what you dig up is going to be invaluable gold, right? That mining inside, you're going to find something, you're going to find the diamonds inside. And I think that for me, before I had teachers that were really empowering me to do my own inquiry work, even if the teacher wasn't abusing power, even if the teacher was doing a great job, they still weren't helping me with this belief that I can't do it on my own. On my own is maybe a little wrong. We need support, but that I don't actually have the answers inside. And so no matter what a great job an outer authority or an outer source, really, no matter how good of a job they're doing, if while they're offering something to me, they're also taking away my self-trust, and they're taking away my empowerment to find my own answers, then the question arises, what is the kind of net benefit there? And what I found for me in the story of my life is often what was being taken away was too great. So I'm going to share actually a little bit from Nisargadatta, who is one of my main teachers, and like all of my main teachers, engages in this inquiry, engages in this exchange. And so all of his teachings come through just recordings of dialogue with his students. Okay, he says, I am not a thing, nor are you. We are neither matter nor energy, neither body nor mind. Once you have a glimpse of your own being, you will not find me difficult to understand. We believe in so many things on hearsay. We believe in distant lands and people, in heavens and hells, in gods and goddesses, because we were told. Similarly, we were told about ourselves, our parents, our name, position, duties, and so on. We never cared to verify. The way to truth lies through the destruction of the false. To destroy the false, you must question your most inveterate beliefs. Realize that what you are cannot be born nor die, and with the fear gone, the suffering ends. What the mind invents, the mind destroys, but the real is not invented and cannot be destroyed. Hold on to that over which the mind has no power. And the last from this section that I'll share. You must not think that faith itself is enough. Faith expressed in action is a sure means to realization. Of all the means, it is the most effective. Faith is not blind. It is the willingness to try. And so, what he just said to us, consider what you really are. You're not a thing. I'm not a thing. If we look at the social issues, the very, very deep, problematic social issues we have in this country, justice issues we have in this country, they stem essentially from this spiritual misunderstanding that people can be things. And that as soon as we can objectify ourselves, as soon as we can put ourselves under some kind of authority, as soon as we can belittle and diminish ourselves, we are objectifying the self. We are thinking of the self as a thing. And then, as we've been talking about in these last few weeks, right, giving the way we treat ourselves is the way we treat others. The selfhood you give to yourself is the selfhood that is the extent of the selfhood you can extend to others. And so learning that I am not a thing and you are not a thing, and no person can be a thing. This is remembering a spiritual truth that our society has forgotten, and it's caused an enormous amount of damage. Okay, and then he tells us practice inquiry. Then he says practice inquiry, and you'll figure this out. Yes, I will share that passage. Yeah, you guys will get a copy of this passage for sure. If you do the work and you investigate for yourself, go ahead and try it, right? All my teachers say, just try it. Like, try the thought experiment. Walk down these thought paths on your own. You're gonna hit a dead end every time that you walk down a path. Maybe I shouldn't even say that. Maybe I should just say try it, But I hit a dead end every time that I go down any path where I'm an object, where any being is an object, a thing that can be judged. It's a crappy one. It can be dismissed. It can be rejected. It can be replaced. Humans cannot be. Life can't be. What we are in essence can't be. And so if we do the inquiry ourselves, we'll figure this out. But unfortunately, like he says, we've been told a lot of stories. And many of them are just so deeply ingrained that they seem like they're a part of us. They seem like they're fused with us. But this process of inquiry, we start to take away the stuff that we're not. It's like the way I can, it would be a bummer if I couldn't like change this outfit, or move through the world, move into a pasture where there's more food. You know what I mean? That there's, that we have the capacity to differentiate between the self and our environment, the self and the outfits we wear, the self, okay? And so the inquiry practice is really asking us to be able to do that inside, to be able to pull apart the things that are just outfits, that good or bad, right? They could be judged or not, but like, they're just outfits. And to know the difference between the stories, the beliefs, right? The things I've been told about myself. And to recognize that some of those I have every right to disassemble. Right? He says here, the way to truth lies through the destruction of the false. And this is the enemy in a way. Last week we talked about fear, and how last couple of weeks we talked about how when we go around the world making enemies, we live in a world of fear. And how we live in a world of war, right? These are the kleshas, these are the obstacles. Fear, war, which is expressed in two different ways, either addiction, essentially, like gimme, 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 that's a kind of war, right? You have to steal, you have to loot, right? Hoard. And then there's the other aspect of war. These are both two aspects of the same experience, but the other aspect of war is the fighting off, the defending, the trying to destroy the enemy. These are our obstacles in meditation, and these are our obstacles to showing up for our values. The other two aspects of this experience are an ego identity, or a separate sense of self, and avidya, which are our stories. And Nisargadatta is talking about these stories that we're taught. And so the inquiry practice is our exploration of what is us and what is not, what is true and what is false. What is false is what the mind invents. All of the obstacles, and these come from the Yoga Sutras. These are these classic obstacles to meditation in the Eastern traditions. And what Nisargadatta says is good news, right? Okay, bad news is, okay, much of what we think we know, we don't. Much of what we believe we are is a fairy tale that we bought. The good news is what the mind invents, the mind can destroy. And in fact, he says this in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different passages, but it will actually just dissolve on its own because it doesn't have the stamp of reality that what we really are has. Okay, so a couple of things. One, the inquiry practice that we're doing right now is about values. What do I really value? And this, for me, has been the most potent inquiry to do, to realize exactly what he's saying, which is much of what I think I value is a story about value. It's not what I actually value. And so I said this on the very short Monday morning talk, but I really, really want you guys to do this work of looking at what you really value. And that is expressed in how we show up, what we show up for, how we spend our time, really. On my journey, I realized that I thought I had this value of like kindness, niceness, that I realized for me when I really went on the journey was much more about me getting my ego fed, feeling likable. It was actually about my fear that I wasn't likable, or fear that I didn't belong, or fear that I wasn't going to be accepted and loved. And people seem to like niceness. So I cultivated this quality of niceness. After years of doing this work for myself, that is not on my list of values anymore. I didn't know it was on my list of values until I really started to look. I'm not actually doing love, I'm doing niceness. And I'm doing it as a way to get something for myself. And I say that now with no self-judgment. But that's been a little bit of a journey. And so the other really, really big thing that I wanted to say about inquiry, about the self-inquiry that we're all being asked to do, is that it's scary. It's really scary sometimes. It's really uncomfortable sometimes. And though I haven't very super directly addressed this, of course, we're in a time right now. This is a majority white community in Nora Village right now, not completely. And we're in a time where so many of us are asking ourselves, what can we do as white allies for the justice movement, for our African American brothers and sisters who have been treated like things since they were first literally shipped into our country as objects, right? So we're all in the midst of this. And of course, in the midst of really also the big environmental movement, the earth has been objectified, the women's movement, the movement for indigenous people, and anybody of the world, in the world, on the world that has been treated like it doesn't have value. So we are in this context right now, right? And so many, so I just wanted to directly make that link. And so many of us are asking, what can I do? And we're hearing from our Black friends, wake yourself up. See your own privilege. See how you are a part of this system. And it's really hard. It's really hard for a friend to come and say, you've been hurting me. Actually, you've been part of a thing that is hurting me. And that hurts us too, right? Because we understand, and we've been talking the last few weeks too about kind of the golden rule, like spirituality in a nutshell, we're the same. That's it, in a nutshell. You and me, we are one. And so if that's not being played out, there's something amiss. And so we know it's amiss. We know there's something wrong. We know actually we want to fix it, right? Or we want it to become better. But man, what a hard thing to hear and to be asked to do. And so how lucky we are that we have each other. I created Nowhere Village as a safe space for us to show up when Facebook isn't a safe space, but we still want to be together from our separate homes, right? But just I'm trying to create all of these supports for you guys for doing just this kind of work. It's the same work that we're always doing, but now you can it might be helpful and motivating in a way to see it in connection with this bigger piece. See, this is exactly what we're being asked to do right now. We talked a few weeks ago about how to be a good friend. And I want you guys to return to these teachings of friendship as you do your own work. How can you be a good friend to yourself? How can you get yourself the support that you need? You have to get yourself to a safe space. Big theme from last week. Get yourself to a safe space. Do a little meditation practice. And then maybe do your journaling or do some painting or maybe take a walk with one of these questions. And I gave you guys inquiry questions for this week, a lot of good ones. Becoming enlightened is a process. And I think so often we want it to feel good. We want to fix it. We want easy solutions. And that's just not the true path. That's just not how it's going here. But I will say, and I want to remind you that, and please reach out to me if you need help with this or being reminded of this. In order to let go of the privilege that we're trying to let go of, there are going to be in this journey moments of surrender that feel like rock bottom, that kind of feel like they feel like a sacrifice. and they feel scary. But what happens is when we really surrender and we open up our palm, then what we need next lands right in it. This has happened to me again and again and again and again on this journey. And I talked a little bit last week about how privilege is a kind of power. It's kind of a puny kind of power, actually. It's not, I mean, it's like anything else. It'll do the job, right? In a pinch, a little privilege will often do the job when we're grasping for something that will make us feel better. Okay. But it is not as powerful as some other kinds of power. Solidarity, unity, integrity, these powers are love, right? Much more, we've got more powerful powers. But what we're going to find is we cling to our comforts and we cling to our privileges when we're scared. And often we'll cling the hardest right before we surrender. And when we surrender, we usually will get a revelation. We'll get some kind of relief. And we'll get some kind of encouragement. We'll get a reward from spirit, from self. The only thing that you have to lose is your falsehood. The only thing that you have to lose, really, really deeply, spiritually, the only thing that we have to lose here in the inquiry journey, in the awakening journey, is exactly what we came here to lose. The problem is what we didn't realize is it is kind of wrapped up. It's entangled with our stories about ourselves. It's entangled with our identities. And so there will be funerals, inner funerals, right? There will be an inner grieving process as you go through and you look at and you see what's false, as you recognize what's false. There will be some challenges. And everything that we do here together is meant to support you. Just I'm going to read Lee's question now. When we feel ourselves not living our values, instead of getting angry or disappointed, how can we soften and start to dissolve the stories that we don't have or deserve? Yeah, beautiful. So that's a really, really good question, Lee, and that's really at the heart of everything that we're doing here. So the first step always is to get yourself somewhere safe. As I just said, these explorations are triggering. These times are triggering. And I personally discovered the power of meditation and yoga and all of these practices really because I had so much anxiety and didn't feel really, really easeful in my body and in the world. These practices helped me first when I was a performer, when I was a child, and I discovered that my warm up was, I couldn't skip it. It was essential. And then I decided I'd start warming up for life. Every morning I started warming up, and then I discovered yoga and was, oh, this is called a morning yoga practice, what I'm doing. And for the beginning of my exploration of all of these things, it was really about just getting myself back to baseline. It's about getting myself back to ease. It's about getting myself ready to perform so that I didn't fall over, from anxiety. It was to get myself in a place to meet life. Now, what we're asking is actually to go even further, not just to like get by, but to actually see through our lies and see through the stories, and to start to understand where suffering comes from. That's another really huge spiritual question. And all these questions end up pointing in the same directions, right? They end up gearing us back to the same things. But why is there suffering? Why do we suffer? And so once I realized that my spiritual practice was actually calling me out of my comfort zone, right? I came to practice first for comfort. Get me to comfort zone, right? Oh, great. It does that. It works. But then I kept with it and eventually started saying, actually, I'm going to now push you past this. Because the real things that are causing your anxiety, the underlying reasons, the root causes that you're just right now with your practice kind of like coping with, these same practices, we can actually get down to those roots and we can start to take that shit up. And this is a deeper, more advanced place to go. And like I said last week, there are times when don't do that to yourself. Just get back to baseline. And so to answer your question, Lee, it depends on how it's coming up. If it's feeling really, really tough for you, get yourself into a space of care and just come back to baseline. When you feel ready to really look at the stories and you're in a safe space to do that and you have the support that you need and the tools that you need, start to dig in. And there's two thread lines for me, two main thread lines that I follow. One is my personal story, and one is the story of our ancestors and the story of our collective. And in both cases, little Lee was conditioned. When you see Lee is not living her values, somebody taught her how to not live her values. Generations and generations and generations of people modeled for her shitty values. And we don't look at it. This is tricky, right? We don't look at it and then go, okay, so it's not my fault. I don't have anything to do with it. It's not to absolve responsibility, but instead to see this is how we got where we are. All of this. And if you haven't been conscious of it, if you've been ignorant of it until now, you haven't been able to shape things for yourself. This is the thing. We want to actually have the power to make change. We can only have power when we accept responsibility. Those two things go together. When things get broken down is when there's people with power who are not taking responsibility, or people who are taking responsibility and not getting any power. Again, in a nutshell, that's what's been going on. Right? The image of a plantation owner, all the power, I'm not gonna do the work, versus somebody who's doing all the work and has none of the power. So the healing process and the justice process is bringing these two back together. And then it's tricky because, like Lee says, like, as I start to take, if I want to say, I want to take responsibility now for racism. I want to take responsibility right now for sexism. I want to take responsibility right now for treating the planet like crap. Can I do that without also taking on guilt, blame, shame? Is that possible? I say yes. Hell yes. And I say, in fact, the shame and the guilt and the blame will steal our energy away from the project. It will mire us in actually what's essentially more ego. The ego has delusions of grandeur, either being grandly horrible or grandly fantastic. And it tends to kind of flip between the two. It's the master, it's the slave, it's the, right, that dynamic. We are exiting all of that and saying, hey, I'm a victim of this shitty system too. We all are. Even the ones who seem like they have power. Because they're brats. They're privileged little brats with power and not, or they don't know how to take responsibility. It's not a healthy human form either. This is hurting all of us. So we can say, I'm hurt by this too. But instead of becoming the victim, you know, we get empowered. We get empowered by our awareness. We get empowered by this love that we're tapping back into as we break down these walls. And so that with a sense of integrity and care and honesty, we can say, I want to take responsibility for some of this shit. I'm going to do my work. Michael asks, along the lines of your false values of niceness, how do we begin to see the false from the truth of these things we cling to that serve in some little way, that are wrapped up so tightly in our being that there doesn't seem to be separation? Yeah. And Pam, yeah, thanks, Pam. Pam says the guilt is not helpful for anyone, right? So yeah, I mean, I think Michael's question is kind of similar to Lee's. Just how do we do this? How do we do this inquiry practice? How do we do this seeing through the false? And there are so many pitfalls and traps along the way. There's so many obstacles that we're going to run into. Practically, I really want you guys to observe. So let's. I'm gonna as I wrap up the talk, I'm gonna actually. This is perfect. This is a perfect segue into kind of bringing this back together, back to our meditation practice. Why that is the core spiritual practice that we do here, and why, if we, you know, I often say meditation is showing up for your values. We can't do any of this work unless we have the capacity to just be aware. We have to be able to we have to be able to sit with what is without acting. We have to be able to sit with what is and be able to just observe it. We're all learning right now that we have a lot to learn in terms of listening skills, the ability to just sit and hear. Growing awareness, you know, like Nisargadatta says, the real is not invented and it cannot be destroyed. The real truths that we're looking for are here. They're here right now. They're not gonna like roll up at a parade when you get enlightened. Here's all the truth. We've been waiting for you around the corner. The truth is, it's already here. Your awareness actually has the capacity to be aware of potentially anything in the universe. And so the first step is learn how to be with what is as the witness. I'm actually going to read this little quote for you guys. This is in the same section. The witness attitude is also faith. It is faith in oneself. You believe that you are not what you experience, and you look at everything as if from a distance, there is no effort in witnessing. You understand that you are the witness only. Michael's the witness, Lee's the witness, Sveta's a witness. Okay? You're the witness. Understanding acts. You need nothing more. Just remember that you are the witness only. So when we learn how to, because here's the fault, here's one of our primary false beliefs that is going to keep coming up. This is one of the obstacles. I believe that I am separate, and I believe I'm in control. I believe I'm like a little god creating reality. And I have to be constantly tinkering to make reality right. The witness is the one who can see. There's little Aaron being formed by some trauma, or there's little Aaron being formed by a sexist society. There's little Aaron having an awakening moment. Oh, look at her. You know, right, I can be the witness to my own life as I do this. I can be the witness to the United States as I do this. If I'm super, super identifying with the founding fathers, and I feel like as I'm witnessing this, if they're being attacked, by the way, right? I'm not witnessing anymore. I am invested. I am identifying. And so what's interesting is we can be the witness and still be, actually really truly be loving. Because we're not like taking sides. We're just observing exactly how it goes down. And then here's this other really cool piece. He says, you're the witness, understanding acts. And this brings us to the real gift of this work. You start to see that your values, when you really figure out what's really valuable, because some things, when you really get in touch with that, you start to realize that you're like a collaborator with understanding or wisdom. You're a collaborator with the force of love in life. You're a channel for these things. You are not ever the manufacturer of your values. Their essence is that they are so valuable, you are smaller than them. And that once we're in that witness space and we can observe, which comes through, for me, hours and hours and hours of sitting in silent meditation and just really doing the work. And then we start to see that we don't have to go to war against reality. We don't have to be constantly fixing or manipulating or judging or shaming or punishing. That's a big one we spend a lot of time doing. If we can actually just sit back and really pay attention to life, paying attention to something is a form of huge, basic, amazing form of love. If we can just pay attention to life, we start to see it's all happening. It's all already happening. Love and wisdom are already at work. And if we want to serve them, it's a matter of getting out of our own way. It's a matter of stopping clinging. So I guess that's what I would say to both of you. Notice when you're clinging and soften. And maybe just say to yourself, that's not me. Whatever I'm afraid of losing can't be me because I'm not a thing. I can't go anywhere. My values can't go anywhere. So it's coming back to that trust again. And learning that we can trust without clinging with one hand and defending with the other. Yes, and Sveta says that, to sit with it without acting is hard, right? We are so programmed to act. This is the overly yang culture that we have, yang being balanced by more yin by these meditation practices that we do. I think I got through all the questions, and I think that's plenty for us to work with for today. We're going to do another talk about values next week. And I would love for each of you, I haven't really been asking this, but I'm going to ask it, to post your values or a little bit about your values in the coming week. I would love by next Wednesday for there to be a few that I can look at. And with this inquiry in particular, I'd love to help you if you have questions, or like, should this one be in here? Like, we can get into the nuts and bolts for people if you want. So you can either send those values to me privately, or you could post them. I would prefer for you to post them so we can all look at them. But I also totally understand if you want to work with me more one-on-one for it. But I would love by next Wednesday, I have heard from a few of you about how you're working with these and what you're discovering. And I'll talk more about this next week, but my deep exploration of my values has brought me to the realization that I don't need this fancy house I live in. So I am moving to a very humble country abode this weekend, and you guys will be seeing the broadcast from there on Monday. Yeah. Life just keeps taking us on a ride. Be in touch, be well, and thank you. Thank you so much for showing up and doing this work.